around him, but that's how you become an MVP candidate, understanding how to utilize those pieces. A.J. Brown says he's going to show you that this year he's a top-tier wide receiver. Well, your quarterback has to play well to allow you to do that. And you know, we are human, right? And in human context, we understand what we saw in the championship, in the Super Bowl. We understand what we saw when he faced Patrick Mahomes. And so if he continues, not necessarily that level of production, but that level of play while his team wins, he'll become an MVP candidate in the 2025 season.
Well, we know he was the MVP of the Super Bowl. We know his team is the defending champs. But the head coach, Nick Sirianni, says the Eagles are not resting on their laurels.
This isn't boxing where it's like you're the champ until someone takes your belt away. No, this is football. Everyone starts off 0-0. I mean, that's been our mindset since day one, has been be where your feet are, be focused on that, because nothing that we did is going to influence anything that we want to do in the future.
I've been fascinated by listening to how all the different Eagles, and I feel like it's more than we've heard in the past. Everything they've sought out, RC, in terms of how to handle winning a championship and coming back and not losing a step, and Jalen Hurts going to meet with Michael Jordan, and you hear that analogy from Nick Sirianni, which I really like. RC, you won a championship. What can you tell us? What's the most important factor in coming back the following year and not being complacent and finding a way to get back to the top of the mountain?
Well, the biggest thing is you don't feel like a champion. Football is a day-to-day, week-to-week thing. And when you're in training camp, you just feel like a guy who's a year older that's in his next training camp preparing for the current season. And that's the mindset. The mindset is, how do I get better today? How do I use today to further our opportunities to win big football games? And if you've ever been around Jalen Hurts, I had an opportunity to talk to him. He is, as Mike Tomlin says, singularly focused on winning football games. And that's what it's about. Believe me, nobody walks in stadiums the year after you win a Super Bowl, the year after you go to a Super Bowl, saying, oh, I remember who they were last year. It's about who you are when you walk in the stadium that day. It's about what they've seen on film from the weeks prior. I think the Philadelphia Eagles understand that's what it's about to them as well. Assess who I am on this day, not who I was on my best day.
You see that note at the top of the group of bullets at the bottom, third hardest schedule in the NFL. The NFC East has a really tough schedule, so that's why you see all of those teams in there with the difficult schedules as the season begins. So if there is something that could be their Achilles heel this year that could keep them from moving up, what would it be?
They're young defensive players. They lost a lot of firepower when you think about Milton Williams. Look at this graphic here, Gardner Johnson, Darius Slade, all the way down here, Greeny. So when we talk about guys like Quinion Mitchell, Jalen Hunt, amongst others, I think they're going to play well, but that is a lot of snaps to lose on one side of the ball.
Once again to one man.
Saquon Barkley. And, you know, it's like, I don't want this to ever come across as like being directed at Jalen Hurts that he's not good enough. To question a little bit of the math, though, when it comes to can he be an MVP, which Ryan laid out very eloquently, the only thing I'd say to that is, like, if they are going to be a dominant team, I believe it is going to be the result of Saquon Barkley. That's not to say Hurts is doing anything wrong. He has to lift the team up too. But this is a team that is driven by Barkley. And if this team wins like they did last year, it will be because Saquon Barkley once again neared that 2,000-yard mark. I truly believe that.
Do they need that? Do they need Barkley to have that kind? RC, I'll let you answer it super quick.
Yeah.
Do they need Barkley to have that season again to win it again?
No, they don't, right? We saw from the Super Bowl what Kansas City's thought process was defensively with Steve Spagnuolo. Let's make Jalen Hurts beat us. And I believe that's what it's going to be early on in this season. And it's easier said than done to stop Saquon Barkley. I believe every team walked into every stadium believing that. But that's what it's going to be this season. And you're going to get one-on-ones on the outside with a 1A and a 1B receiver with the quarterback who understands how to distribute.
Like this, can we keep going?
The whole show can be Mike T says.
Hey, they have a lot of good players, but they have a lot of young defensive players that have to step up. And if they do, they'll have a chance to compete. But when you look at, we have a graphic here that just shows all the young players from Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Hunt, amongst others that are going to have to step up because they've lost Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Gardner Johnson, Darius Slay. So those young players are going to have to play well and play well early for them.
I guess I should have read the rundown before I came here and decided to wear Eagles green because that is where Dan Graziano is. I promise this was a wild coincidence. Graz, I want to talk to you about what you're hearing about Jalen Hurts because at the center of all of this, we've talked about Saquon Barkley, what this team's key is to repeating. He's got a new offensive coordinator this year. How, so far, is Jalen Hurts acclimating to Kevin Patullo?
I think it's been pretty smooth, Courtney. And look, he has a new offensive coordinator every year. Remember, a couple of years ago, after his first Super Bowl appearance, they lost Shane Steichen to the Colts job. They elevated Brian Johnson. That did not go well. Last year, they bring in Kellen Moore, and obviously we know how that ended. That ended extremely well. So you can look at it and say, well, the last time they elevated somebody from the staff to this role, it didn't go well. But that's 2 years is a big chunk of Jalen Hurts' career, and he's done a lot of growth and maturing. Obviously, in that time, he is now a Super Bowl MVP. His confidence is at a level where it probably wasn't 2 years ago, just by virtue of all the success he's had since. So I think there's a feeling here that it'll be a smooth transition. These two already have a relationship. It reminds me, I was talking to Baker Mayfield when I was at Bucs camp earlier this week about a similar situation. They lost the offensive coordinator to a head coach job, but the guy that they elevated, Josh Grizzard, is a guy that Baker Mayfield has a relationship, was involved in the game planning last year. So I think there's a lot of reason for optimism that this transition at offensive coordinator will go a lot more smoothly than it did a couple of years ago.
Graz, I want to stay with you here on this because I just mentioned Saquon Barkley. We know about his workload last year, 345 carries, 2,005 yards, earned him all the accolades that he rightfully deserved. But is there any sort of concern for a 28-year-old running back with a workload like that there might be a step back for him in 2025?
Of course. I mean, Courtney, when you look at it, you add up his total touches in the regular season and the postseason last year, it comes to 482. That is a monster number, an historically high number. And when you look at running backs in recent memory who have repeated that kind of workload year over year, it's tough to find them. I was texting with Hembo this morning, and we went all the way back to Eddie George and Terrell Davis in terms of finding that kind of workload repeated in consecutive years. So Saquon Barkley's a player that obviously there's an injury history there. The Eagles want to be careful. They know that the load he carried for them last year, and it would be nice to be able to back him off a little. Flip side is he's also their best player, and when their offense got clicking last year, it was when they figured out that all they had to do was open up some holes and let Saquon take it to the house from anywhere they happened to be on the field.
Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson, Herm, knowing all the skill players they have around Jalen Hurts in this offense, is there anything you think the Eagles will do to maybe mitigate some of the wear and tear on Saquon this year by relying elsewhere to be able to move the ball?
Well, this is why they brought in A.J. Dillon, right? I mean, the workload's not going to be on Saquon so much as it was last year. He's not going to rush for 2,000 yards. There's no doubt about that. He won't touch the ball as much. I think if he does touch it, he'll touch it more in the passing game. I think he's dynamic as a back coming out of the backfield catching the football. So you guys were commenting, too, on Kevin Patullo, the new coordinator. I think he'll do a great job, actually. He was the quarterback in college, and my son played with him. So I've known him since he was in college, since he came out of high school. And he's been in this Philadelphia offense. He knows the quarterback very well. It'll be a real easy transition for Kevin to take over. And actually, he played the quarterback position. So I wouldn't worry about the coordinator thing at all.
Feels like that's kind of become the norm for a lot of QBs in the NFL, the rotating cast of offensive coordinators and play callers that they deal with from year